Welcome into Factfinder Investigates. I'm Dylan Domingue. We're continuing to follow the developing story out of Minnesota this week. The federal agent who fatally shot 37-year-old Renee Good in South Minneapolis Wednesday is now identified as Jonathan David Ross. Sources confirming with CBS News that Ross is part of a specially trained tactical ICE unit. Now, this isn't the first altercation with the vehicle. Homeland Security says last summer Ross was dragged by a suspect's car in St. Paul, suffering injuries requiring dozens of stitches. The investigation is now in the hands of the FBI, but state leaders there are pushing back, saying they should be more part of the probe. Governor Tim Walz says state agencies must be part of the investigation to build community trust. Now, we are hearing from more people, including a Kansas City attorney with 32 years of experience, sharing his thoughts about this case. With Homeland Security saying the ICE agent acted in self-defense, attorney John Passero says the explanation may not be that simple. He says the video he's seen does show the driver attempting to drive away, but says based on the angles that he's seen, the situation did not justify firing a weapon.
I don't think the officer was justified in using lethal force. It backs up, first of all. So typically you wouldn't associate backing up with an aggressive maneuver to run into some officers who were in front of her. The driver committed two separate misdemeanor offenses. That doesn't mean that you deserve to be executed either.
The Homeland Security does maintain this was an act of self-defense by the federal agent, but the agency's justice manual says firearms should not be used to simply disable a moving vehicle. President Trump says he wants to block large institutional investors from buying houses, saying that a ban would make it easier for younger families to buy their first homes. But what would that mean for potential home buyers here in Wichita and across the state of Kansas? Well, the approach focuses on corporate ownership of homes that pushes out traditional buyers, often turning those homes into places to rent rather than to buy. So when it comes to the potential for a ban on institutional investors for housing in Wichita and the vast majority of the state, a ban would not make much difference because those investors are typically in much bigger markets. There are also some questions as to how this would help be implemented.
Nationwide, institutional investors are people that own 100 or more properties. They own 2 to 3% nationwide. There are some metro areas where institutional investors own 12 to 20% of the single-family homes in that area. I think in those markets, that's going to make a huge impact and going to help lower prices. For Wichita, I have not heard of a single institutional investor coming in here and like scooping up or buying single-family homes.
Well, one of the things that we've been kind of keeping our eye on with this one is any details, but it doesn't seem like there's much out there in terms of the actual execution of how this is going to be put in place.
Now, Henderson there says the biggest hurdle for new home buyers is saving enough money for a down payment, inspection, and other costs that often closes the door for those trying to replace rent with ownership. We're taking a closer look at the city of Wichita's announcement of the water treatment plant delay. That plant, which originally planned to open in April of last year, now delayed once again, this time until at least 2027. Thomas Lynch spoke to some of you about the delay and how public frustration is rising along with the water bills.
Because of the issue with the design, they did not work properly. They started to fail.
Wichita Public Works Director Gary Jansen says that the issue they found at the water treatment plant had to do with the clarifiers.
One of the first major part of the process is clarification. We remove suspended solids. We take kind of the big stuff out of the water, the dirt and stuff that's in there.
These clarifiers are some of the largest being built in the country, but Jansen says that that is not why they are failing.
Ultimately, to save costs, save space, a lot of things as opposed to having more clarifiers.
This delay extends the already late project. Discussions for the plant began in 2019 and was scheduled to open in April of 2025. Instead, in May, they had to pause testing due to mechanical failure, but still said they were aiming to open the plant by the end of the year. Then in November, issues with the clarifiers stalled progress, and now they are saying the plant will not be open until at least 2027.
Just the same old over and over with the whole bureaucracy of the water department.
Joe Williams is sick of the project.
It's been going on for so long, and you drive by the place and it looks like they've been building it forever, and it's really expensive looking.
And with rising water costs, he's ready to have the new plant up and running.
We try to water our yard, but you can't hardly afford to do that anymore.
This comes after a vote in early December to increase water and sewer rates by 7.11%.
And our water bills are going up too. Somebody's got to pay for that.
Now, the cost for addressing the design flaw that caused the delay will be covered by Wichita Water Partners, the team building the plant. Those expenses will not be going to the city nor the taxpayers. We do have a follow-up to a Factfinder investigation. Rock Regional Hospital in Derby is officially closed. Staff members have been moving out their belongings and equipment. This all comes after a judge ruled the hospital's eviction process will proceed since it owes more than $15 million in back rent. Now, this leaves Derby with no hospital at all, but they still have an ER at Wesley. We did speak with multiple staff members who were moving their things out. All of them said that they had been told not to talk. Some actually left in tears. Derby Mayor Mark Statz says this is a massive loss for the community, and the city is hoping someone else will come provide these services.
Well, it's not really the city's role to entice somebody to come down here. It was a private organization. I think we can try to, maybe facilitate something if somebody was to reach out to us. But I still think that there's a lot of legal stuff that has to happen before anything can positively be done.
Rock Regional is not affiliated with the city in any way, but Stott says this is a great loss to that community. Well, here in Kansas, lawmakers are proposing a bill that would change day-to-day life for students across the state. Some Kansas school districts have already decided to ban or limit the use of cell phones, but this bill would make that consistent across Kansas. Now, the bill prohibits any student in a K-12 school from using their phone during instructional time, with only certain exceptions here, such as a student allowed to use their phone for medical reasons or for a class that requires the use of the phone. It would also prohibit school employees from communicating with students via social media. We spoke with several students in the Andover area about the bill. For the most part, they support the idea of prohibiting phone usage, but they do have concerns about using their phone to contact their parents.
We should be able to put them in our lockers, so if there's an emergency at home or something, our parents are able to either contact us or something like that.
They should at least keep our phones in the office in case there is an emergency, and they should tell us if our kids call.
That bill already has over a dozen sponsors, including Senate President Ty Masterson. It will be introduced at the start of the legislative session come Monday. So to come on Factfinder Investigates, these malnourished horses seized in Cali County are recovering thanks to the help of multiple rescue groups. We'll show you how they're being cared for. And a Kansas woman who thought she was getting a dog was actually scammed out of hundreds of dollars. We'll show you that scam so you don't fall for it.